My glasses off. There we go. Hey, good evening, everybody. I'm just gonna wait for a few minutes for everyone to come on board. Um, just invite a few friends as well who I knew wanted to be on here. Or didn't want to be here, but I'm letting you know it's on anyway. Great. Hi guys. Thank you for joining. So, today we are going to be talking about this topic which several people, hey Miranda, thanks for joining, um, have been inquiring about. Um, Death is one of those things that is a topic that you don't really want to talk about. Everyone tries to avoid it because it's an area that is very sensitive, and it's something that we would rather push under the shelf and not really think about. Um, and particularly when I look at us as believers or Christians, we're very good at just thinking, oh no, I don't want to think about it. If I write it, then it's going to sort of foretell me dying. But actually, what then happens is we leave quite a bit of a mess within families where there are arguments, disgruntlements, things are not clear with what the bereaved person wanted. And today we just want to touch upon that topic and have a few experts. I've got some solicitor friends and a will writer expert who's going to be just talking to us about that area. So I'm going to start off by bringing Vanina Mazana on, who has a will writing business. I'm just going to bring her on camera and she can just start to tell us more about why bother yourself, why trouble yourself, and do this thing of writing a will. Hello, glamorous Vanai. How are you?
Hi, Tendai. How are you?
Oh my gosh, you look amazing. I feel like a tired, middle-aged woman now, considering.
And when you are my age, you just have to try harder.
You're doing good. You're doing good.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks for agreeing to talk about this topic, which I try and convince my clients to set up wills and put a will in place, but it's always on the back burner. But we're glad to have you tonight to just tell us why bother yourself, why trouble yourself, why do a will. Yeah.
So, hi, everyone. Um, my name is Vonai Nyamazana, and I am a will writer and estate planner. And this is a topic I think that probably most people in our community, and I'm going to talk mostly about my community, which is Zimbabwean, but I think it will cover most African communities anyway. But at the end of the day, a will is a will, and anybody, any nationality should be thinking about writing a will.
Mm.
But I think in our society, in our community where I come from, people do not want to talk about wills because they feel like if I do that, then, I'm going to die
Mm.
somehow. It's like people thinking if I go into hospital, I die. So, but, writing a will is just being organized. It's
Mm.
just putting your house in order.
Mm.
You find that even in the Bible, when is it King Hezekiah was told that he was going to die, the first thing that he was told by the prophet is put your house in order.
Mm.
So I think this is a directive from God that whatever happens, you need to put your house in order. And
Mm.
and we know that the Bible also teaches us to leave an inheritance.
Mm.
If we do not write a will, it is most likely to be chaotic,
Mm.
especially for the people that you leave behind,
Mm.
your children, your spouse, anybody else, your parents, if you die before them, anybody else that is a party to your life. is going to be affected by this. And we know that when death happens, people run around. We are trying to sort out funeral plans, expenses. Is the body going to go back to Zimbabwe? And then you have all these arguments where people in Zimbabwe are saying, kanari wangu mwana anovigwa kuno. Wangu mwana achauya kuno. You know, whether there's money or there's no money, they just want to see the body in Zimbabwe. So putting your wishes in order and telling your families in advance as well that, Baba, Mama, this is what I have put down. These are my wishes. Should I die, please respect this. Please respect my spouse and my family. And when the time comes, things will have been put in order. So there is
For now, just
there
to
is
pause there, can you actually put details of where you want to be buried in a will? Is that part of it?
absolutely. It
Okay.
is a part of it. The templates itself, the questions that the will writer will ask when they're taking instructions. One of the questions is, where would you like to be buried? What are your wishes? So there's a section where you write your funeral wishes, and you can be very specific in there about where you'd like to be buried. I was doing one recently, and she was quite clear that if she died here, she would like to be buried in this country next to her husband. But should she die in another country, because she comes from another country, then she would like to be buried there because she didn't want her children to have to incur the expenses of bringing the body over. So definitely those wishes can be put in your will. Everything, it's to the last cup, if you want, to your rings, to your anything that you have that is personal to you, that you want to give away. Be very specific. So you don't have people coming and fighting over, I know Kuti Mama had this, and they start hunting and scouting around in the house looking for things. But if everything is written there, you have your executors in place that will say what is in the will, and they will distribute that. So nothing goes out until after the will has been read. So what I wanted to just say and talk about is that it's nothing difficult. There's nothing complicated about having your will done. And now that most of the people I think I'm talking to are in the United Kingdom, and so your wills are going to fall under the laws of this country, and what they require of you is you are over 18, you are of sound mind, you sign the will before two witnesses who can testify that it really was yourself that did write the will, and it has to be in writing. So those are the main things that are required to make it legal and valid. And you'll have to think about, who do you want to be the executors of your will? You can have one or you can have two. It's always good to have a substitute in case one of them dies, and then there might be a problem there. So think about who you would like to be an executor of your will. Now, writing the will, it's just making certain that the people that you love are covered. You are looking at your wife or you are looking at your husband, right? You want them covered. You are looking at your children. You want them covered. You are looking at your parents. If I had millions, and say if I died young, I would want something to be given to my parents if they were still alive. Because if you don't, and you don't write that will, it will have to be decided in probate. So the laws of the country would then, they've got their rules that they say, okay, so if you die without a will, this is what is going to happen. The first 250,000 pounds will go to your wife, and the other half will then go to be shared by your wife and your children, and it goes down. Your parents might end up getting nothing. your niece that you love might end up getting nothing.
Mm,
Those other special things that you wanted to gift to other people might end up not being distributed in the way that you wanted.
mm.
If you
Tab
were
Tabs
to
have just
die,
asked, issues with clothes need to be in the will too. And she asked, what do you think, Vanai?
okay, um, there are specific things that are special to you that you might want to mention.
Mm,
And then the other things you can just say, I will leave the rest for my executors to decide,
mhm,
or the rest to go to a charity.
mhm,
So you are not going to pick every pair of shoes, every blouse, every earring. There
mhm,
are special things that will be, special that you will want to go to specific people,
mhm.
that are special in your lives. So it's not everything. No, not every rag in your kitchen. Every spoon. No, but uh, it's just knowing what can go in and
Mhm,
what can't go out. And there are things that won't matter to
mhm,
you or to your children.
mhm,
Yes.
mhm,
So the other thing that you also want to make sure, now I'm talking to maybe the younger people who've
mhm,
got younger children. If
mhm,
you've got children under 18,
mhm,
you want to make sure that they are left with somebody that really cares about them,
mhm,
someone that will look after them maybe as well as you did or could,
mhm,
someone close. And in a will, there is that section where you can, it's a guardianship that
mhm,
you leave your children with so and so,
mhm,
you know, and whatever money you then have is put in a trust for your children for when they get to a certain age. So really writing a will is just about putting things in place, putting things in order,
mhm,
making sure that um, your children don't end up in care. We live in this country, there is social services. They will care what happens when there's young children about. So
mhm,
if you are a single mom, it really is worth thinking about and putting in place.
mhm,
Even if you are a married couple, anything can happen to both of you at the same time.
mhm,
Have you thought about your children?
mhm,
Now, if knowing my community, there can be trouble
mhm,
between the in-laws, fighting over the children, fighting over property. Now, if social services get to hear that the parents have died in this home, and now they come in and they find there's this chaos,
mhm,
what they do, because they do have an obligation to look after young children, they will remove them
mhm,
to go and look after them, either until you guys sort yourselves out, or to make sure these kids are looked after. And they're going to care, they're going to get foster parents to
mhm,
look after them, simply because you guys didn't think about this. and
mhm,
and it really shouldn't be difficult. There's aunties, there's grandmothers, there's that you can talk to say, mama, talk to the two parties, the two in-laws,
mhm,
your parents, your husband's parents. This is what we are thinking, this is what we are putting in place,
mhm.
so that when the time comes, there's no fighting.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if the children go into care, mese maruza, there's no winner there, the kids suffer.
Mm. But Vonai,
And
don't you think that perhaps that's one of the reasons that people avoid doing a will because such conversations perhaps are difficult conversations? Because let's say, you know, between husband and wife, maybe my sister is one of the ones who really gets on well with the children and is level-headed, and I think maybe should stay with her. And then husband says, well, actually, my sister. So is this one of the reasons? I don't know whether you come across it that people maybe just leave it as a topic and don't address it
uh,
because it's.
you can leave it, but I think it's still worth putting down, and just talk to the person that you have decided, or
Mm,
between you and your husband, that this is the best person to look after our children. Because once that's in writing and
mm,
it's a valid will, that is what will happen. The children will go over to that person, whether the rest of the world is going to fight and whatever is going to happen, but the child will have gone to a safe place. And that would have been the wishes of the parents. The fighting will always happen, but at least you know, kuti, all right, itarwa, but vachasara vachirwa, but my kids have gone to the right person. Rather than kuti varwe and they end up in a home that you never ever intended them to be in. So it's safe for the children. You know, the others will only fight for so long, but the law is the law, especially in this country. The law is the law, you know. The other thing is,
you mentioned something earlier that perked my attention, where you said if you die without having a will, you know, the first 250,000 goes to the spouse, and then the rest of it is shared with children. Is this only the children in the marital setup? What if, you know, wife or
it is the children, anybody who is a child, and if there's a legally adopted child, they are legal. They are a child, so they will be a part of that.
What about secret children that that only show up at the funeral? Will they be in there as well?
I think that the court will probably have to decide on that issue. I don't know if Rumbi maybe can shed a bit of light on that one. Children from small houses that were never known about, who suddenly just turn up. I mean, these are issues that are dealt with every day in the courts, and they have to decide and come to a decision that whether this is a child within the rules of intestacy when somebody dies without a will. I think I might leave that one to Rumbi to just to touch on.
All right.
Yeah. But then there's also another one I wanted to mention is when you have a disabled child. You know, you can leave a will, you can put things in trust for a child who's disabled, because they have no capacity. So there are provisions for such children. There are trusts that you can put in place to make sure that they are looked after, and that their money will not be abused by people that will look after them. So there's all those things that you need to think about when making a will. And if you, for instance, you do not believe in marriage and you are just living together, you need to be thinking about making a will. Because say, for instance, you, John and Jane, John and Susan live together. They've lived together for 10 years and they never got married. If John dies without a will, Susan is not going to get anything. So they need to write a will. What will happen with John's estate, it will go to his parents or the children, if they've got children together. So Susan will not get anything. The same if Susan dies, if the other way, vice versa, if John dies, which did I say? Yeah, the other way around anyway. So the other partner will not get anything. It's not automatic. If you are not married, it's not automatic. So, you know, just be clever, just be wise and put your house in order. You know, nobody is saying get married. What we are saying is, even if you are not married, make sure you put a will, your wishes are down in writing, it is witnessed properly, you've got your executors in place, you know, and nobody then cries at the end of the day. And when you are thinking about making a will, the things that you need to think about is what is in my estate. Your estate, you are looking at your properties. If you've got houses, cars, shares, investments, savings, all that makes up your estate. Jewelry, whatever you have, all that is what is going to be put together and is going to come up as your estate. So if you are thinking about writing a will or going to somebody to help you to write a will, for instance, if I was going to do it for you, I would give you a list of the things that I need you to think about, so that when you come, I'm asking you, do you own a house? You need to know the value of the house. Do you have, title deeds? all those things, we need to see them. Investments, savings, how much do you have in savings? People have secret accounts and all sorts of things. But when it comes to writing a will, all that you have to talk about it. We have to put it down because we don't want Kuti, when you die, some money goes. So I was just reading. Rumbi says it's all the children who inherit.
So anyone who's a child.
Anybody who is a child of the deceased. So I suppose that will have to be done through court, that the child indeed is a child of the deceased person. Yeah. So you want to be I was saying you don't want any secret accounts to go and without somebody knowing kuti ari kupi, because that money, if it is not claimed and it's in an account that's not known, if it's in this country, mari yoyo will go to the queen. And it's money that you have worked hard for, so in your will, make sure the will writer knows about all these things, and they put them together, and we come up with everything that that should be in your estate. You want to think about who do you want to inherit. So you are thinking about your spouse, you are thinking about your children, you are thinking about your parents, you are thinking about your siblings, you are thinking about all those things. And also the thing about the wills is you can actually state someone that you do not want to inherit. So you can make it so clear, because what happens with wills sometimes when the executors take it now for probate, someone will turn up and challenge it, right? And when that happens, sorry, what was I saying?
You say you're giving us a lot of information. You said when someone comes and challenges a will.
Oh, okay. There is that clause I was talking about, that there are people that you do not want to inherit. You might have an ex-wife, who might think that she's entitled, or you might have a best friend who might think that he's entitled because maybe you had the deal that you went into 10 years ago. So if you put that clause, because you know that this particular person is very troublesome, and is likely to cause a lot of trouble for your beneficiaries, put it in your will. That is there for you. You can put that clause in to say, I did not make a mistake by not mentioning so and so as a beneficiary. I do not want them to inherit anything from my estate. So that puts a full stop to that. So the will really is there to make life easy for your beneficiaries, for the loved ones that you leave behind. Yeah.
Patricia, so Patricia's asking, what your contact details are, and how can people get in touch with you? Because obviously, I think it's triggering a lot of light bulbs in people's minds to say, "Oh gosh, this is something I need to do." I always say, no one ever walks in and says, "Oh, I want a will," because it's not something that is attractive, really. But how can people reach out to you, and how can you?
Okay. I'm going to put my email address on here. Or you can just go ahead on Facebook and inbox me, and I'll put my email address on there. Yeah, let me just put that. I'll just do that now.
So Sandra Irene is asking about legacy trust. I wonder.
I'm not too sure. I think I will leave that one to Rumbi if she knows about legacy trusts.
Yeah.
But there are thousands and thousands of trusts. The law is really good because the law is really good because it covers just about everything. Everything you can think of is covered. There are trusts and clauses and wishes. I mean, you can put in a wish for just about anything in your will, And if you do that, then you know you've covered anything that might come up.
Mm-hmm.
um, because you want this will to be valid. You've gone to all the trouble, of getting a will writer or a solicitor to do it for you. It does take time, because you have to be so careful that you put everything in, and
Mm-hmm.
that it's done properly, and
Mm-hmm.
that it's witnessed properly, so
Mm-hmm.
that when you do take it in, for them to grant the permission for you to then, for your executors to then start distributing your estate, you want to make sure it doesn't fail.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it fails, you are starting from scratch.
Mm. You
You
know,
then have to go, yeah.
someone's just asked what happens when someone challenges the will. So if the will is challenged,
If the
what?
will is challenged, this is why you have the probate courts.
Mm-hmm.
Then it has to go through that.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever reason you are giving for the challenge has to be investigated.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. And how long
You
does
challenge
probate take? How long does it take usually to go through the process?
uh it can take a good 6 months, and
Mhm.
that's quite short. It can take longer than that,
Okay.
because the courts also want to make sure that the state is going to the right people that deserve,
Mm.
that they are adhering as closely as they can to the wishes of the testator.
Hmm. So would
Yeah.
you say that that's another reason to do a will, to avoid having to go through that? Because can people access money, say funds for a funeral and things like that, if there isn't a will in place?
I think there are certain banks that will allow you to take some money out
Mm.
without the grant,
Mm-hmm.
because they know that funeral arrangements costs have to be taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
But you will not have access to everything,
Mm-hmm.
because money gets frozen,
Mm-hmm.
and they have that letter, that grant from the probate court. You will not access that money, but there are certain banks who will give you something. There's a limit that they will give you, so that you can still go ahead and attend to funeral expenses.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Mm.
wonderful. Thank you so much, Vanai. That has been
Very.
incredibly useful and informative. And I'm just going to get Rumbi to also address, because I know quite a lot of people were asking, and I know have properties abroad as well, wanted to look
Yes.
at that.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. It's very important for people to understand that, if you have a will, sorry, if you have houses in Zimbabwe or whatever other country, you cannot include them in your UK will.
mhm,
So each country has different laws.
mhm,
So if you have houses in Zimbabwe, you have to go according to the law of succession of that country.
mhm.
So Rimbu is going to go into detail on that.
Okay. Someone's just asked about assets that you acquire after signing the will. So perhaps how easy is it to change that will? Will those be included automatically if you say my properties, or um, do you have to come back and do a new will after each time you buy a new house?
Mm. The thing
You've
with the
got
wills,
serious.
you have to be very specific,
Mm,
and very detailed. Even if you say, I will this car to my son, you
mm,
have to say which son it is.
mm,
So, if you are gifting a house to my children, you have to mention which house it is.
mm.
So if you then acquire more houses, you then have to go and have your will amended,
Okay.
and it shouldn't be difficult. It's either they add what they call a codicil, or it has to be amended, and the new properties are put in place.
Mm,
At the time that you made the initial will, you might have had 40,000 in savings,
mm,
or, you know, but by the time, 5 years later, you could win the lottery.
mm,
You've got £2 million. You definitely want that in your in your will. So you just go back to whoever drafted it for you, and you update it. It is good that every two, maybe 3 to 5 years, go and update your will. Go and have it reviewed. Things change. Children grow. You know, they might not be under 18 anymore. So
Mm.
there's no need now for that guardianship anymore. So your will is going to need
Evolving.
updating every so often. Yeah, don't do it and 10 years later it's still not done. That's not good. It
Mm-hmm.
will cause problems when eventually you die. Yeah.
Awesome. Salome Ru's
And if you
asking
if you
about.
change names, there was an interesting one where somebody went and changed names. Someone who was a beneficiary. So maybe you've got your son called John Nyama. You know, he's your son, but your son then decides that he wants to change his name. He doesn't like to be John Nyama, and he becomes Samuel something. But the will is stating that I leave my house, number 10 Kings Road, to my son John Nyama. The probate court will not, there's no John Nyama because John Nyama is now Samuel. So now Samuel has to now go and prove that I'm still that same person,
Mhm.
bring in paperwork, legal documents to prove. That just prolongs
The time.
the whole process.
Mm.
So whenever there's a change, please go in and make sure that you look at your will again.
Mm-hmm. Salome Ru's asking about properties abroad and whether they're subject to inheritance tax. Um,
You will have to go by the laws of that country.
mhm.
Mm.
Okay. I don't know whether that answers it. I suppose possibly she's asking. I didn't want to go into that too much because we're not really dealing with
Yeah.
inheritance tax today.
Yeah.
But let's say she has an estate and her properties here are worth 800,000 and she's got properties abroad worth 200,000. Will they be brought in when her and her husband are assessed for that? Are you not sure?
I don't think I'm that clear on that. I know that when they do the will, say in Spain, they will have to do a will in Spain, and whether it will incur charges in Spain, it may affect actually their tax here as well. I'm not too clear. I would have to check on that. Is it Salome? If you might want to just either get in touch with me or Rumbi, and we can check that for you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Vinay. That is wonderful. I'm just going to say goodbye to Vinay. Thank you for sharing about the UK will writing process. Please do get in touch with Vinay, guys. We're doing these lives and just making people more aware, just to probe your memory. I always say
Yeah.
death comes like a thief. No one really thinks, oh, it's gonna happen to me. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
just do it once and at least you've got that initial one done. So please make sure
Yeah.
you get in touch with her. If you don't have your will already in place, just make sure tabs, thank you, declare everything. She had to
Thank
declare
you,
all her
Tabs.
properties in Zimbabwe
Yeah,
as well. Yeah.
absolutely. With the will writing, you will be asked as well if you've got properties in any other country.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
HMRC would want a piece of that pie, I'm sure. But we'll leave that topic for another day. I'm going to get
Yes.
an expert to talk about that with you guys,
Yes.
who's,
Uh,
who's who's covered. Thank you so much, Vanai. I'm going to ask Rumbi to just come on and talk to us a little bit about properties abroad, I guess, in Zimbabwe particularly, which is where a lot of us are from. So it's not going to be too long. But yeah, thank you, Vanai. Make sure you
bye,
put your
everyone.
details
Thank
on
you.
there. Thank you.
I have. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Good night.
good night. So let's see if I can find Rumbi again. Rumbi, please reveal yourself so I can see you. Where is she? Um, but now you'll need to
Thank
drop off,
you.
I think. You need to come.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, that's it. Hmm, I'm trying to find you. Touchy topic, eh? I hear people saying, "Oh, when I started talking about the whales, my partner was like, Are you trying to kill me?" I guess it's all these fear things that come into place. But like when I was describing, nothing to be worried about. It's just literally having a think about things and writing it down, making sure your intentions and your desires are clear. Oh, there we go. There you are, Rumbi. Let's see. Approve and add. There we go. Should be coming on soon. Rumbi is a very...
Hello.
Hey, hey, Rumbi.
Hi. Hello.
Thank you for joining us.
Oh, good.
Good.
That's great. You.
Yes. We were talking about people who have properties, oh, assets abroad, land, chattels, and the importance of when I said that the will here doesn't cover them there. Tell us a little bit more about that or situations that you've seen. Um,
Yeah. So I think this definitely affects a lot of Zimbabweans. And the talk
mm,
that Voni gave was really informative and really good. And I think, as you know, we keep stressing how important it is to have wills, because when you see people's true colors when someone has died, and when people are fighting over a deceased estate, it's one of the most contentious areas of law, where people are where you're having disputes when someone has died. So
mm,
a lot of people came here from Zim, and they bought properties in Zimbabwe, um, more than here, right at the beginning, like in 2000 and from 2001 up to possibly about 2008, a lot of people were investing back in Zim because maybe their status here wasn't sorted. They were not sure whether they were going to stay here. Um, some people just said we're coming for 6 months. We toshanda tudzokera. So a lot of people were investing back
mm,
home. So it's so important to
mm,
ensure that you've got two wills, one to cover your property
mm,
here, and the other one to cover your
mm,
properties in Zimbabwe. And because those are
mm,
governed by the laws, the succession laws in Zimbabwe. So it's a completely different regime from here. It's similar because there's similarities, but if you just have a will here, it won't cover your properties in
your
Zimbabwe.
properties. Okay. Okay. And
Yeah, and
I,
so you're gonna ask a question?
yeah. Sorry, your. I think your sound has got a bit of a delay compared to when I'm speaking, but it's okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I was going to ask whether I suppose um this business of small houses or whatever is a bit more prevalent out there. I've come across quite several stories where, you know, people had maybe secret children or other children out there, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that then
Yeah,
open up. How does the law in Zimbabwe
yeah.
work with that?
So
You mentioned that
I think
here
the
it's
problem
included.
problem comes where, for example, sometimes you were partners, married, just people paid lobola, and you didn't have like a marriage certificate in Zimbabwe. Then one
Mm,
of you came here, got kids together, my paper don't work out, and your husband stays in Zim, or the wife stays in Zim and gets married to someone else whilst you
mm,
are here. So you could someone a scenario where someone could have bought a house with their husband,
mm,
and then
mm,
their customary law husband akavisirwa pfuma, and then they get married under
mhm,
Chapter 37 to
mhm,
someone else, and that name is in the husband's house in his name, and he dies. Then his wife and his children, they would inherit. So
mm,
it would become quite complicated then, because you would have two marriages. So if you didn't even have a customary law marriage, if you were just cooking pots, because sometimes people would have just been, partners, not even formal partners, but ngo become a poto. And so you then invest into that relationship, buy property in his name, because people couldn't go back home, so they would have just bought property in his name, for example. So
mm,
that is something where you definitely need to ensure that you not only have a will, but ensure that you change names on the properties. So Lulu was saying that Zimbabwean law recognizes marriages, customary law, and with a marriage certificate. But what's vital is it has to be a customary law union. So not just living together without. So you can actually have a customary law marriage that you go to court. So there's a chapter 37 and there's another chapter 511. So there's 2 chapters that you can get married under in Zimbabwe. So it can get quite complicated if you don't sort yourselves out, especially when you've been away for a long time, and you haven't done anything to secure that. Another scenario could be where you're married, you die here, and your husband is in Zimbabwe, and he will inherit property and not leave anything for your children. So if he inherits everything, all you have is a house. So under the succession laws of Zimbabwe, the house will go to the surviving spouse, plus 200,000. So they'll get the house plus 200,000 or a child's share, whichever is greater. So, for example, if all you have is the house, it will go to your husband. You still have that marriage certificate, and your husband has perhaps moved on living with my Nini. Your children won't necessarily actually get anything. And you could have worked all your life here, and then it ends up with your children not getting anything because they're with dad in Zim, and dad has, dad gets everything, and Panama Nini, and that's usually that kuparara kwefuma. So it's really important to make sure that people, we speak about these things. They sort out wills, perhaps put properties in trust for their children, and ensure that things are sorted out whilst you're still alive.
So like that scenario that you mentioned, where perhaps things went a little sour, but there wasn't a formal divorce, and someone came here and left the spouse there, and they have property together. Clearly, that relationship, the communication is not good. So what can someone in that position do?
I would say probably get a divorce. That's the first thing. is definitely get a divorce so that the property issues can be sorted. If the property is in your name only, then you can donate it to your children, or you can set up a trust where your children are the beneficiaries or someone else is a beneficiary. So if you are not talking and the house has got people are renting it out, and it's in your name, but you have a valid marriage that you haven't had a divorce, it's then vital for you to sort out matters. For example, if you don't want to get a divorce, because there's some people who don't want to get a divorce because of religious reasons, so maybe Catholics, or their own personal conviction that they don't want to get a divorce. So it would be important to put the properties perhaps in trust for the children, or to donate to the children if you have children, or to someone else that you trust, or to get a divorce and sort out the properties whilst you're alive, so that there isn't anything, so that it doesn't go to someone that you don't want it to go to. Like what Vanina was saying, that if you've had if the relationship is just not there anymore, you wouldn't want someone to then inherit the fruit of all your hard work when you've been in the diaspora.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, thank you for that. It opens up some difficult conversations, I guess, doesn't it? That need to be.
It does, yeah.
But
It does open up. And even if you've got property in Zim and you're married here, and you might be having problems again, it's important, isn't it? Because we've had so many sudden deaths in our community and young people dying. So it's so important to have these conversations, speak to people like Voni who's doing will writing, come and see us for legal advice, see a solicitor or a lawyer in Zimbabwe to sort out your properties in Zim. it's really important than just burying our head in the sand.
Mm.
It's important to get these things sorted out.
Awesome. Wow, thank you. That's been very informative. I don't know if anyone else has any more questions. I know we've tried to trug through quite a few of them that have been coming up. But yeah,
And I
thank
think the question that was there before about the children,
you.
that the children, even if they are illegitimate children or they're legitimate children, they're just counted as children. So they, as long as they your name's on the birth certificate, they're your child. So they'll be counted just as children. And there was a question about legacy trust, and that's it's quite complicated. I don't do trust, but it's setting up another estate while you're alive, so that you can use so it's some of your properties you can set them up in another estate, which is a legacy trust, which you then leave for your generations to come, and that benefits you from tax law and things like that. So for me, that's
So
not something that I would.
that one's for the big shots, isn't it? The ones who have enough for their own lifetime and then are leaving some for the next generation. So I pray that we're
Yes,
moving
once
into
you
that
look at
round, right? Awesome.
oh, somebody's just asked a question and they've said, please talk about single mothers. So single mothers, it's important. I think Vonnie spoke about leaving someone who's going to look after you, making your wishes known as to who would look after your children once you've passed away. And also just ensuring that everything is. And I think for single mothers, to be fair, it's actually less complicated because you've got your children. So if you die intestate, your children will inherit, and that would, I hope, be what you wish. But if there's a particular child that you think uyanoita drugs, anongoparadza fuma, for example, then as a single mom, you would know that that child, maybe you would have to set up a trust fund for them and get someone to administer that trust, so that they only get the money, maybe like £200 a month until they're whatever. So it's the same as what you would do for a disabled child. So if you're a single mom and you know your children, so you would make sure that in your will you set up trusts, you then make provision for your children, knowing the weaknesses of your children and the strengths of your children. So that's really important. Another example that I want to just give before we go is of a single mom in Zim, for example. So it's a story that came out in the courts. What happened is she donated her property to her child. So she donated to her son, and she carried on living there because she was scared that if she died, her relatives would come and take the property. So she thought, let me just donate it to my son so that when I die, hapana nyaya. And then her son got married, he did well, he graduated, he started working, and they lived in that house together with her son, and then he and his wife. He sadly got killed in a car accident. And then when he died, his wife inherited the property. And then she proceeded out her mother-in-law of her own house, because that house belonged to her. So and then she ended up having to go and live in the rural areas.
Hey.
So there was now a court case where she was disputing that. But that is something that's so important as well, to then have a provision that if your son dies, the house would come back to you, or you would need to have to think about all the different scenarios, because people change when they died. So
When it comes to money,
that's
people's
quite
Oh wow.
yeah.
Oh, thank
So
you.
Tekla, I hope that's helped you. Because you were saying let's talk about scenarios with single moms. So I hope that helped.
Very useful. Thank you so much for that, Rumbi. That's been really informative as well. And I hope that all of you who've been watching who are in those scenarios, that's a red alarm bell, ringing loud and clear. a take action button for you to go away and do. The other, when we were talking about putting things in place as well, many of us have life insurance policies. Make sure that they're in trust. Putting them in trust pretty much keeps them out of your estate for this as well. So make sure that you put your policies in trust, specifying it's as good as having a will on it. Who do you want that money to go through to as well? I'm here. I am your I'm your protection specialist. So any protection needs, don't forget to inbox me, book an appointment into my diary, and we can also look and address that. But thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful evening, and yeah. Share this video with your friends and your family. Let's get our houses in order. Good night, everyone.